Welcome to Conversations With. Today we will chat with a Detroit legend and hockey treasure. His name is Mickey Redmond, and if you are a Detroit Red Wings fan, he needs no introduction. He's been broadcasting hockey for better than 40 years, from the networks to the Detroit regional market on Fox Sports Detroit. Mickey has won awards for his broadcasts, but for those youngsters out there, don't ever forget that Mickey was a tremendous NHL player too. His name is on the Stanley Cup twice as a member of the Montreal Canadiens. He's had his most productive years, though, as a player with the Detroit Red Wings. And he's had the best up-close and personal look at NHL hockey and the Red Wings than anyone I know. He's a fabulous storyteller, a great guy, and is a treasure trove of history and opinions on some of hockey's most game-changing events. Believe me when I tell you, this was a great chat that I enjoyed every second of. My conversation with Mickey Redmond. There's no other guy that I know, Mickey, in broadcasting and in Red Wing hockey history who is better for this interview than you because of your experience and your years with the National Hockey League and Detroit. That's why you're the man.
Well, I think there's another term for what you're talking about. It's called institutional memory. And yes, I've been around a long time, I guess. That's the nature of being 72 and being in Detroit when I got traded here. Oh, gosh. January of 1971 was the day of that trade. And a couple of days later, I arrived here, and the rest is history. And I couldn't be happier to be a U.S. citizen now and living in Michigan. It's the greatest thing in the world.
Well, believe me, there are Detroit fans, hockey fans, and just broadcast fans who are delighted you're here. I want to go back to the beginning. You talk with such reverence about Peterborough when you're on the broadcast, and people don't realize that's where you're from, and that's where you started your career with the Peterborough Petes, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I was actually born in up in northern Ontario, Kirkland Lake, Ontario, which is pretty close to the Quebec border, and it's a little town of maybe 12,000 people. We moved down. My dad took a transportation job and a hockey job at the same time to work with the Petes and the senior team there in Peterborough. And I was only, I was 1950. Hang on a second here. I was born in 47. So it would have been probably about 52 that we moved down to Peterborough. So pretty much I was raised, in Peterborough. And fortunately enough, I ended up playing for the Peterborough Petes, the hometown team. Not too many guys get to stay home and play for their junior team like I did, but it happened that way. I made the team by accident, and next thing you know, I had 4 years in and was looking at maybe going further. So that was all a good time in my life.
Going further, you went to the Montreal Canadiens, and back then they were the New York Yankees of the National Hockey League, weren't they? Yeah,
they were. Those days, Jim, were pre-NHL draft, and basically you were, if they were going to give you a chance, they just said, okay, we think this kid may be able to, be a player. They put a bag of equipment in your hand and let you go. And if you weren't good enough, get out of the road. We got somebody else. And if you were, well, let's get to the next step and the next step and the next step. So it was a pretty interesting challenge for any young guy. And I was 19. I think I had another year of junior left. But I had been going to that camp in Montreal with the Canadiens, and we'll get to that in a second. But for 2 years before that, as a 16, 17-year-old. And so finally they said he's had enough time in junior, and let's give him a shot and see if he can make it in the pros. That was a whole different kettle of fish altogether. But just so people would understand, back in the day when there was no draft, the 6 NHL teams all had sponsored junior teams. And in this case, for example, in the Ontario Hockey League, the Montreal Canadiens sponsored the Peterborough Petes and the Montreal Junior Canadiens. The Toronto Maple Leafs sponsored the Toronto Marlboros and St. Michael's College. Kitchener Rangers belonged to the New York Rangers. Niagara Falls Flyers and also the Oshawa Generals belonged to the Boston Bruins. The Hamilton Red Wings, of course, belonged to the Detroit Red Wings. And who am I forgetting? Anybody there? Is that the 6, I think?
Rangers?
Rangers was Kitchener
Okay.
Rangers. And so that was how how it all went in those days. So anytime that you were a young guy, say 14, 15, 16, mostly 16 and 17, I guess, they would, if they thought you could play junior, there was no draft there either. They would ask you to sign what they called a C form. And for that, you got $200. And you automatically belonged to the big club when you signed with the sponsored team, whichever one you were a part of. So that's how it all happened with me. With the Canadians sponsoring the Pete's, I signed that C form, so I was a Montreal Canadian property, and only them could I go to. It was a crazy system. And and as it turned out, after 4 years of junior, they thought, well, you know what, he may not learn anymore there. Let's give him a chance for real. Because the funny thing is, that we talked with guys about going to training camp, and when you're really not ready to go, and they would say, you had a great camp, have a great season, we'll see you later when you go back to junior, and say goodbye. And all you were there was to fill in as a scrimmage guy. That's all the Canadians did was scrimmage. So they'd bring in 20 extra guys, and they'd scrimmage for 4 weeks or so. And in those days, training camp in the NHL was 6 weeks long. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So now they're 4 or 5 days.
The same thing in the National Football League, you know?
I started as a 19-year-old, but it was very interesting the other day. I heard some kid was getting, a young man out of Ontario getting what they call special exception. They have to have approval to play junior at 15 years old, playing the OHL.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, geez, I wonder how old I was when I started in junior. And I went back and did the math, and sure enough, I was 15 in September of that year. Would be probably, I don't know, 64 or whatever it was, or 63. And I started as a junior at 15 years old, but they didn't have to have any special authority to do it. You were good enough, you went.
Yeah.
And so I started as a 15-year-old, turned 16 in December, and the rest is history. So it's good to look back, and sometimes you forget when you get all these institutional memory years behind you, you forget what really happened back then.
Yeah, and you were so young. When you got to the Canadiens, the names on that roster had to be like, what am I doing here? Did you have that sense?
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Somebody just asked me not long ago if I thought you should be in the NHL and could I play, and I said, absolutely not. I was scared skinny.
Yeah. That
you couldn't compete with them. These guys were, I weighed 155 or 160 pounds, and these guys were grown men, some of them 220, they had wives and children, and it was totally different when I was there potentially to take a job. And thank God that my father had been a professional hockey player. And it wasn't a real fun ride for the first couple of weeks. I was in pretty big trouble, and I called him, and he said, you have to understand, this isn't a game anymore. It's business. And you're there potentially to take shoes off a baby's feet and food out of their mouths if that player gets disposed because you're going to take his job. Well, of course, when you're a young kid and playing junior, you're just having fun. You don't think of that stuff.
Right.
My dad knew. So he said, if you're tired of getting beat up and banged around, here's what you need to do. And if you want to stay bad enough, go do it and tell them you want it bad enough, and away you go. So I did.
And the thing is, in Montreal, I mean, you were there for 2 Stanley Cups early in your career.
Right.
What a great thrill that had to be for you to be on a team like that and get to the final, get your name on the cup twice.
Yeah, it's so long, you almost forget. We didn't get the Stanley Cup like they do today.
Yeah.
They did have a parade, but I'm trying to remember. I guess the parade was a week or so after whatever you won the cup. But it was a wonderful experience, and I mean, there's so many great players in this game. Two that always come to mind when I talk about this stuff that played with us here in Detroit or for the Red Wings: Bill Gadsby and Marcel Dion.
Right.
Hall of Fame guys, and never won a Stanley Cup. Wrong place, wrong time, I guess, but great players. So, yeah, the good fortune for me to be in that situation and contribute was very special. And once you got them, they can't take it away.
No,
so
they sure can.
To look back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you come to Detroit. Yeah. The trade is for Frank Mahovlich, right?
Right on. Yeah.
And what was that like for you leaving there, coming here? Mahovlich was kind of a name here in Detroit.
Oh boy, he was a name everywhere.
I liken it to the Tigers when they traded Colavito and Keene, that whole thing. You come in as the kid, kind of an unknown for an established guy. How was that for you early coming into the Red Wings?
Well, I think it probably gave me an opportunity, I think, to grow. In Montreal, it's interesting when I do look back at the progression that happened. The first 2 years, Jim, I basically sat on the bench and didn't get to play much.
Uh-huh.
It's crazy, and I remember keeping notes way before it's time to do that. That I was only getting a shift or two a game. See, in those days there was 10 forwards, not 12, and there was only one extra guy, 3 lines and one extra guy, 6 defensemen and 2 goalies. So you had basically, what was that, 10, 6, and 10 and 6 is 16, 18 guys. And now there's a 20-man roster that they can dress. So there was one extra guy, and usually, in those days it was me. We'd sit at the end of the bench, you open the door for everybody every night. In those days, the benches were on each side of the rink. They were on opposite sides of the rink. Now they're side by side. So you'd start a game and you look across at the other team, and whoever I was on the other team, how you doing? You'd open the door all night long. You hardly got any shifts. But, you had to be ready to play at any drop of a hat. And that's the way they break you in those days. They weren't giving you anything. You had to earn it, for sure.
And the other thing about when you come to Detroit, the name that Detroit hockey reveres is Gordie Howe. You played against Gordie in Montreal, and then when you came to Detroit, it was his last year in the National Hockey League before he went on to the World Hockey Association. What was that like? And was he as good as all of us in Detroit say he was, that he was just the king?
Well, absolutely. And not only, I think, the numbers speak for themselves with Gordie. But Gordie was so willing to share. He was a really good citizen and a good human being.
That's the other thing about Gordie that people don't realize. That as a player, he was unbelievable. But every player that I've ever talked to, Alex, the days that played with him, even after he was retired, they just couldn't say enough good things about Gordie as a human being, as a friend, as a guy that was unselfish to a fault almost.
Oh, for sure. There's no question about that. I mean, I remember that half a year that we were together. We were on the ice after practice one day, and I was no mistaken, I was a goal scorer. And but Gordie had, Gordie, mind you, he was at the backside and the back nine for sure, but he had the confidence to be able to either in the business world, it's like hire the smartest people you can. Don't be afraid that they're going to take your job. So we were sitting out there one day, and Gordie says, "Mickey, come on over here. I'm going to show you something." So we're sitting out there, and we got a goalie, and he's a right-hand shot, and so am I. And I could shoot the puck pretty well, and I used to practice it every day. My dad always said, you got one of the best shots going, but if you don't practice it every day, you won't have one of the best shots going. So I was always practicing. Gordie called me aside, and he said, "I want to show you something." And so we're standing there taking some shots at the goalie, and he says, "Okay, what do you see? There's a puck on the blade now. It's about 3 or 4 feet away to the right of us." He said, "What do you see over the goalie's catching glove on the left side?" He was a left-handed catcher. And I said, "Maybe 6 inches up there between the goalie's arm and the goalpost." And he said, "Okay, now step out from behind your stick, hold the knob of your stick in your left hand, and go and stand behind the blade and the puck." So I did, and he said, "Now what do you see?" I said, "Holy Jesus, there's 18 inches over there." And he said to me, "The way you shoot the puck, you can't see it, but it's there. It's always there. You put that thing up there, there's no chance they're stopping it. They don't have a chance. You got too good a shot. It's heavy, it's fast, and it's hard, and they're not going to stop it." Well, that became really, and to this day, I preach the same thing for young players. That if you can practice that shot every day and get good at it, the goalie's not going to stop it. And it just so happened, interestingly enough, about a month ago, somebody sent me an interview that I had done. The guy you remember all too well, Ray Lane, was around
God
here
bless
for
him. Absolutely.
many, many years.
Yeah, Ray and I did a show like this, as Conversations With, last year. Talked to him about his career as a broadcaster.
Yeah, there you go. Great guy.
Great.
So Ray had interviewed me, and to a dime, I said the very same thing as I just said to you. Shooting, top corner, you go there, practice that every day. Goalie's going to have a really hard chance stopping it. And I thought, wow, all these years later, 50 years ago, and we're still talking the same thing. I said, that's pretty cool. So,
it is cool.
Yeah, that was Gordie. The moral of that story, Gordie was willing to share with me a little trick of the trade,
right?
That would help you, beat these goalies. Because a goalie with all that equipment, we always felt they had the advantage. And but a lot of those days, Jim, too, the goalies didn't wear masks, so we could use our shot as an intimidator.
Sure.
Get up high on them, get them a little bit scared, get them pulling up, and the fact of the matter is, when a goalie is pulling up, he can't move his feet to the side. Can't move.
Bobby Hull made a career at that, right? With the speed,
sure.
the size of his shot, goalies didn't want to see him
go right
down.
for the head.
Right.
Right for the head. Yeah, get out of the way. I could only want to hit you right between the eyes.
That was the Wild West back then.
It was the James Hudson Bay rules.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, two more questions about Gordie and greatness. Okay, what, in your opinion, made him great?
Oh, I would say his determination to play the game the way he did. First of all, he was a big man in that day. He was still at 6'2" and around 195, 200 pounds or so. He was a big, strong man, and he could be mean as a wildcat. He had a streak in him. You turned him the wrong way, boy, oh boy, you were in big trouble. So he could. You talk about Hudson's Bay rules. He could play it any way you wanted. It didn't matter.
Can I tell you a quick story? And you can comment, but I'm a kid. Safety patrol day at Olympia. I go up there and I'm watching. Somebody said, make sure you watch Gordie Howe. Just don't take your eyes off him. So I'm in the end zone with my safety patrol guys, and I watch him. They're playing the Canadiens, believe it or not, and John Ferguson cross-checks him after a face-off. Gordie goes down to all fours, and I see him peek around and catch Ferguson's number. I think he wore 22, right?
Yes, he did.
And
yes,
so
he did.
Later, third period that game, the Canadiens are coming out on a rush, and Ferguson is busting down the boards to try to get into the play. And Gordie's loping along right next to him, and I'm watching him, and there's a 6-inch elbow that he came up with, caught Ferguson right in the chops. Ferguson went over the boards into the bench, and Gordie just skated away like nothing happened. And I thought, that's why he is who he is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned Fergie, because Fergie ended up being one of my major mentors in Montreal. Took me under his wing.
He was a tough one.
You talk about a competitor. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Pound for pound. Pound for pound. Well, I'll tell you what, it'd be hard to find a tougher guy than Fergie. And he could be really, really mean. Oh, boy. Did he ever come to play? And competitor would be a word that you would use with Fergie. He was a competitor like nobody's business.
Like Gordie.
So, oh, yeah. Absolutely. 100%. Do whatever it takes to play the game.
Now, here's the other where I was going to go with greatness, because you've seen the whole thing through your broadcasting career, but you played with Gordie. But over the years, there have been the greatest, like Gretzky and Orr, then Lemieux, then Ovechkin, Messier. All through these years, there's been these great ones. The game's changed, and so the player that becomes the greatest kind of changes. But from your perspective, what has those guys done to be the great one? And the eras can't compare, but they're still really, really good hockey players.
Well, people ask that a similar kind of question all the time. It is impossible to pick the best player ever, really. Right. But I grew up playing against Bobby Orr, and Bobby Orr his reputation is what it is because he revolutionized the game completely from the blue line.
Yeah, he changed the game. That's another factor in why guys can be considered great, right?
Oh, my God. He changed the game completely. the funny story about Bobby Orr was that my father, I told you he was a pro hockey player, played for the Whitby Dunlops.
Right.
And they went and played the Russians in 1958 over in Oslo, Norway. The coach and the manager of that team was Ren Blair. And Ren Blair became the administrator or the GM of the Oshawa Channel. And Ren Blair called my dad one day. I believe I was only 13 years old. And Ren Blair called my dad. He said, I would like your Mickey to come up and play for the Oshawa Generals. And you don't have to practice. Peterborough is only 30 miles away. Just bring him up for the games. He said, I'm also going to bring in a kid from Parry Sound called Bobby Orr, who I think is going to be a really good player. But my mother interceded and said, not a chance. Not a chance. 13, 14-year-old kid playing against 20-year-old men? No. So they shut that down. But the next year, Ren brought Bobby in from Parry Sound to play in Oshawa, which was sponsored by Boston, and that's why he was a Boston Bruin. And that same year, I filled in with the Petes because somebody had an injury, and that's how I made that team as a 15-year-old. It was crazy. So I played against Bobby all those years in the OHL, and he turned pro a year early like I did. But he revolutionized the game.
And did you
God, he was such a great skater.
Did you see his impact coming?
Oh, God, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, he was he skated better than most forwards, and his creativity was incredible. He was also tougher than people know. He had to put up with a lot of crap and had to defend himself and stuff, too. So he was incredible. And I actually found an article the other day that they picked an all-star team one of those years when I was a junior. The two defensemen were Jim McKinney from Toronto and Bobby Orr. And I forget, I was the right winger. I'm not sure if it was Andre Lacroix was the center who was in Peterborough, my centerman for 1 year. And somebody on the left wing, I forget who that was. It might have been Danny Grant, who I played with in Peterborough and in Montreal and in Detroit. So it was, you look back and you go, oh my God, what a special days those were. But back to Orr, he revolutionized the game from the blue line position. You had Big Bird Robinson in Montreal, who was tough, rangy, could rush, could skate, could shoot. Mario Lemieux was incredible. I did an all-star game, broadcasting an all-star game where he scored 5 goals. He hit every move in the book. As a matter of fact, there's a trivia question, I believe, about that. How do you score 5 different goals in the NHL in different situations? And I think it's power play, penalty kill, shorthanded. Power play, shorthanded.
Even strength would be one.
Shot, empty net. I forget this. And it's like, really? And Lemieux did it all. He had people turned and knocked inside out with his strength. He was unbelievable to watch. And then Gretz was Gretz. He was 2 and 3 moves ahead. And then there was, Coffey with his great skating, scored 48 goals or whatever it was 1 year.
Yeah.
Ray Bork. Dennis Potvin and the Islanders, they won 4 straight. These guys, I think the game opened that game up for these guys. And then you had, the era that I came into. There was, Howe and Rocket Richard and Jean Beliveau. I played a little bit with Beliveau. What a man he was. What a big, 6'4", big rangy center. Classy as they get. I mean, just goes on and on.
Yeah, that's the thing I remember about Beliveau. Beliveau, I remember being in the old Lindell once, and I was working in Detroit. First time Canadians came in, and they came into the Lindell, having a few drinks and burgers. But Beliveau was with them, and he kept that entire team in check in the place. He was the captain, and he ran that show. And the young guys, old guys, whatever, they deferred to him. And as an observer of that, me sitting at the bar with Jimmy Boots Karras, I said to myself, man, this guy, if there's a captain, that's the guy you want.
Oh, yeah. He was incredible, Big John. Yeah. It's funny to tell you a funny story about Big John. My dad played in Quebec City. See, Big John, basically, they say, he's the one that built the Quebec Coliseum, where they have this worldwide Pee-wee tournaments now, still to this day, and the whole thing. And the Montreal Canadiens wanted him down there so badly. I believe they built that stadium for Quebec so they could get him and a whole bunch of stuff. So my dad played for the Quebec Aces at one time in the American League, if I'm not mistaken. The coach was
Oh yeah.
Well, Big John played. Punch Imlach was a coach, and Big John was a rookie. My dad was probably 36, 37 at the end of his career. So when I got to Montreal, the Mrs. Molson, David Molson's wife, orchestrated for my mother and dad to come to Montreal. Now, you got to remember, no cell phones in those days.
Sure.
I'm not even sure there was color TV in 66, 67. People didn't move around like they do today. So for them to go to Montreal was incredible. And then the expense, because nobody had any, much money in those days. So Mrs. Molson got my mom and dad to come to Montreal for a couple of days. So my dad came down to the dressing room after the game, and Big John, in his broken English, looked at my dad, and my dad's name was Eddie. He said, "Eddie, I play with the father, and now I play with the son." He said, "I think I'm feeling a little bit old." And my dad, they had a laugh about that. See, Big John was at the end of his career. He was 36 still.
Yeah.
And they had played together maybe 20 years before when John was in the Quebec League. Oh,
isn't that amazing?
So they had a good laugh over that. He was a gentleman like nobody's business, and an incredible hockey player.
Absolutely, and what a leader. The other thing about you were a sniper, you were a shooter. You just said that when Gordie gave you that tip. A lot of people ask me when I played football, they say, who's your toughest guy to block, and who was the guy that gave you the most trouble? From a shooter standpoint, what goalie gave you the most trouble?
Bernie Perrant was awfully good. Awfully good.
Yeah.
He was good. Ken Dryden was an interesting cat. He only played about 8 years. He quit. He became an attorney or whatever. He only lost 50. I believe he lost 58 games in 8 seasons. Total. Ridiculous. Now, you can say he played for great teams. He did. But he was big and rangy, 6'3", 6'4".
Well, wasn't the knock on him, Mickey, that the hockey quote-unquote elite thought, yeah, he's too big to play goal, right? And he's like 6'4".
No, not really.
Not really?
No, I mean, the pads were different. They were smaller and stuff. He was tall, but I mean, he was a good goaltender. But people will argue this till the cows come home about having a good team in front of you and good defense like Serge Savard and Robinson and all those guys and Lapointe. But the bottom line is he made the saves when he had to make them, just like Osgood has done and still can't get in the Hall of Fame here, 400 wins. But
right.
And they fault him for being behind good teams. Well, so be it. But I remember one night in Montreal, I got just after I got traded. Dryden also he started wearing that mask that was tight to the face. They didn't have the cage way out.
Right.
But when you hit a guy in the face with a mask like that, the compression of the mask against the skin would just slip you wide open. And of course, I was always headhunting. We played together in Team Canada '72, and I certainly wasn't his favorite guy. There's no question about that. But I jumped on the ice in the Forum one night as a Red Wing, and my first shift, like 2 minutes into the game, and boom, I got a breakaway. And I thought, this is going to be my night. I'm going to waste the first one on him, and I'm going to hit him right between the eyes. Well, I didn't realize he was 6'4", and I hit him in the throat and knocked him down. And so, we're coast to coast with buttered toast, hockey night in Canada.
Yeah.
Everybody's tending to him. I bend over, I look, I said, well, next time, get out of the way, you big son of a gun. Don't do it again.
That's funny.
But and he did not like me.
Well, I have to
but you know what? It was my dad. It was, hey, you got the shot. Use it. Take every advantage you can.
And that was the
game. I got 3 on him.
Yeah, and that was the way the game
was played.
3. Did you?
I got 3 on him that night, and 2 of them were right on the ice. Because he was going up after I hit him in the head area. He was moving up, and I went, boom, next one was on the ice in the net.
How about that?
So it's all the psychology of the game. But,
exactly.
He was a great goalie.
You mentioned another thing just now that I wanted to get to. You played in some of the great venues. I think back, hockey, not just because of the players and all that, but the places they played, the Montreal Forum, the old Olympia, the Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens, these places, I'm sorry, but they have a romance to them, and you experienced all of that. That's kind of cool, isn't it?
Oh, there's no question about that. The original 6, Chicago Stadium. The Boston Garden was a snake pit to go into. People were right on top of you. Even the Olympia.
Oh, the
much
Olympia.
like the Boston Garden.
I remember going up to the Olympia to watch. I couldn't believe it. I mean, you were in the upper level, and yet you were right over the ice.
Remember they called those things the wing high boxes. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
They were way up high, and you were right over top of the ice. But so the crowd was right on top of you, and very intimidating if you let it be. Maple Leaf Gardens for sure. It's now they still have an ice surface about the third or fourth floor. I've been in there. It's a I don't know what they call it. It's a grocery store, like a Toronto Dominion grocery store or something like that. On the main floor, but you go up 3 or 4 floors, and there's a rink. It's a smaller rink, but it's a semblance of Maple Leaf Gardens. It's pretty cool. The Forum in Montreal, of course, with the French Canadian people, you could cut the air with a knife. The electricity that was in it when you stepped on the ice in the Forum.
Mickey,
I mean, it was incredible.
We would,
New York, Madison Square Garden.
Sure. I would watch Hockey Night in Canada on Channel 9 and Windsor Channel and watch a game from the Forum just so I could hear Roger Doucette sing the anthem in both languages.
Yeah. You remember the color of his hair?
I it's so long ago. I just remember it because it
was white.
Well, believe me, the picture on our TV was so snowy. If I got the audio, just listening to him sing both versions of the anthem was to me just great.
Oh, you're right. He got good memory. He could belt it out, boy.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, he could. Let's move on. Now, you get out of Detroit. Well, how about scoring 50 goals? First time ever Red Wings scores 50, 2 years in a row for you. Yeah. That's when you were All-Star twice. But that season, those seasons when in Detroit, you never made the playoffs.
Right. We were in the 17 division, and we lost, if I remember correctly, at least one of the years. The last weekend of the season, we lost the playoff spot by 1 or 2 points. It was unbelievable. And very disappointing for sure for that to happen. But, as time has gone on, sometimes you look back and you look at certain things. And yes, I did score the 50 goals back-to-back. At 42 the year before, I believe.
Yep.
But I look back and I go, my third year in Montreal, which really was my first year, the first 2 I just sat in the bench all the time. I never realized until I saw it on a hockey card or a Wikipedia thing that I scored 27 goals there. And I thought, wow, that to me is almost more special than the scoring the 50. The 50 does have a ring to it for sure. And that was always the hallmark after the Rocket got the 50 goals. But that 27 goal year for me in Montreal as a first year player full time, I'm almost more proud of that than I am the 50 goals. It's amazing. But you know what? Those were good days, except for not making the playoffs. We were very, very close, as I said, point or two. But at those days, Jim, and there's no secret, our organization was in disarray. I think the ownership thing was really not good with Norris being an absentee owner.
Well, and the consistency, you didn't really have the coaches that came in. It was like 1 year in, 1 year out. And they were trying to find something and never really were able to find anything. No. I think it's not only in hockey, but in every form of business that, leadership begins at the top. And it was very obvious when it came to the hockey, when the Ilitches bought the Red Wings from the Norris family, that all of a sudden things began to change around here. There was no secret, no coincidence that was going on, because they hired the kind of people to do their job and leave them alone and provide the kind of funds to do what you have to do. And that's where we ended up going on a 25-year run. But, when you have people who, it was just not run very well back in the day. And you're right. We changed coaches like you go by and go for bread. They were all over the place. Right.
So it wasn't real good situation to be in. And you had to battle through all of that. But, in spite of that, we still came very, very close. And I got to play with guys like Alex and Gary Bergman. I mean, what a great guy and a good defenseman he was. Nick Livett, tough left winger, fight anybody. He scored 20, 25 goals.
Great guy.
Marcel Dion came in.
Yeah.
Marcel came in. Danny Grant, who just passed away here not long ago. He got his 50. That one year after I was injured, I had the back surgery, and I was coaching him a little bit about you got to get it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're that close, you can't take it away, Danny, once you get it. So he did, and he got 50 right on. So, yeah, a lot of good memories. The non-playoff thing, though, is certainly a bugaboo that's very disappointing when you look back at it, because we had some pretty darn good hockey players here.
After your career, though, you went into broadcasting. Was that a plan of yours, or did that just happen by accident?
No, accident. 100% accident. I just talked to somebody the other day about that. I tried to make a comeback in '79, but my back, I'd gone too long without getting a surgery, and the breakdown was too severe in my right side. And so it didn't work, and I came back, and an attorney friend of mine said, would you like to try some television? I know they're going to, I'm not sure if they were doing 15 games on pay-per-view or what it was. I don't remember. But I said, well, I guess, why not? And they stuck a microphone in front of me and said, go. And that was it. And I remember I was telling the guy the story. I said, oh my God, you get an 8x10 sheet of paper. You've probably been through this. And you write down a whole bunch of questions. And then you basically, in the early days, you don't even listen or hear what your guest has to say.
Exactly.
You're so focused on right? Have you been there before?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. When I started out, that was exactly what I did.
Yeah, that's right. And then you begin to be a good listener. And when you finally can get to that point as an interviewer, you go, geez, that answer just gave me another question, and you can expound on that. So I said to this guy, I used to have my friends, and you probably did the same thing. And I said, okay, guys, nobody is showing me how to do anything or telling me anything. So I need you guys to watch the game, and the next day we'll go have a beer, go to the bar and have a beer, and you can tell me how I did. Well, that might have been the worst thing I ever did. Oh, my God. Those guys were laughing at me and say, oh, Mickey, you did this. You had the microphone in front of the guy's nose. You didn't have it down. I go, oh, geez. I asked the wrong question. But you know what? It taught me the hard way.
That's how you learn.
To get it right. That's right.
That's the only way to learn.
Oh, it was crazy those days. Just wild,
and the thing is, it's wild. It's crazy. It starts that way, and you have no clue. And then in 2011, you win the Foster Hewitt Award for an announcer who contributes to hockey. I just think that had to be one of those things where, hey, I made it. I did this thing, and I can do it. You had to be in love with that idea.
Well, what happened there is Ralph Mellenby, who used to do all the Olympics for not only Canada, but the United States, was with Hockey Night in Canada. And after that first year here in Detroit, I got a phone call from him. And he said, you're rough around the edges, Mickey, but I think you've got some potential. I said, well, okay, whatever. I didn't really realize what I was getting into. So he said, I'd like you to come to Toronto, and we want to talk to you. So sure enough, they offered me to go to Montreal, where I played, and work with. And this is another part of my history that I'm very proud of and blessed. Danny Gallivan, Hall of Fame announcer, and Dick Irvin, Hall of Fame announcer. In Toronto, it was Bob Cole and Jimmy Houston and all that.
Sure.
Dave Hodge.
No, those are
McLean,
those guys are the Ernie Harwells of Canada. I mean, they're the best.
So when you talk about playing with Howe and Beliveau and Fergie and Bergie and all the guys, and then I go, and how about the broadcast side? I got Gallivan and Cole and Dick Irvin and on and on. It's like, oh my God, how lucky was I?
What a career!
I used to go to Saturday night, and I would do a game in Montreal, and the odd time in Toronto, and then in the midweeks I'd go and do a midweek game for somebody, and you'd fly out Tuesday, do a game Wednesday, fly home Thursday, fly out Friday, go to Montreal, do a game Saturday, fly home Sunday. Did that for almost 5 years, and had a ball, and was fortunate enough, believe it or not, to cover the New York Islanders 4 straight Stanley Cups.
Wow.
And those guys now, anybody who follows hockey will understand this. It takes 4 series to win the cup. The New York Islanders won 19 straight playoff series, 4 cups, and they got beat in the finals in the 5th year by the Edmonton Oilers. So I watched the progression of Messier, Coffey, Curry, Pure, Anderson, all of those guys, Gretzky, take over from the Islanders and watch Potvin and Bossy 9 straight 50-goal years. Come on, give me a break. What a big Clark Gillies. They called him Jethro. Oh my God, big tough guy, could play. Those are good days with characters in the game, and I got to call those Stanley Cup finals 4 straight years.
Wow!
And watch the Oilers grow up and become champions. And when they learned how to win 3-2 or 2-1, not 6-5, they became champions. And so that's how it all got started. And I had 5 really good years at Hockey Night. And then I got a phone call from Jim Lights, who used to be here with us. He's now in Dallas. And he was probably the president of the Red Wings at the time, or executive vice president or whatever. And he said, we're gonna split our TV and our radio up. And I'm going to bring a kid in from Glens Falls, New York. He's never done the NHL and he's never done TV. So I'd like you to be the color guy, and you're going to have to hold it together while we teach this guy. And by God, it was Dave Strader.
What a great pair you guys were. Absolutely.
Oh, my God. We had 12 years together. And he was great. He was really great. We lost him way too early a couple of years ago. But that's how, and at the same time, I walked away from Hockey Night, and you can relate to this, where most guys work for a regional or a local, and then they work their way to go to the network. Basically, I did it in reverse.
You did it just the other way.
And because I wanted to be home more, not so much traveling, and to have a home team. And when that opportunity came with the Red Wings, and at the same time, I got hired to do around 30 games with ESPN. So I still had about a 50, 60 game schedule, which is plenty of work. And that started the whole ball rolling here with the Red Wings for the second time, I guess, in 1985. And as you know, it's been an incredible ride ever since, because we were the Dead Wings, they called us, in 84. We drafted Yzerman in 84. In 85, I believe that was a 40-point season. And I'll never forget that. Right near the end of the year, might have been the first year. Yeah, it'd be 85. And Strader and I were walking into the Minnesota Met Center, the old rink. And Gallant and Yzerman were shaving their sticks down before the game. And Yzerman looked up and he goes, "Oh, cripes. Here comes those TV guys. We never win when they're around." And I said, "Stevie, I got news for you. You don't win much when we're not around either." The moral of that story is that team got 40 points. And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you got me there."
That's the other
40-point season.
I was going to bring up some names kind of as a quick association thing as we come to a close here. You've covered the Wings through this incredible 25-year run, and I don't think anybody will ever have a run like they were. From the time they made the playoffs, they were a team that had the opportunity to go to the Cup every year, which is just impossible. But there are names that sprinkle in and out those years. The first name, obviously, is Stevie Yzerman. When you saw him come in as that kid that he looked like 13 years old when he first started playing, what did you see in him?
Skill. He had skill. And he came out of Peterborough, my hometown. And they didn't even want to keep him here. He was small. He was highly skilled, but he was small. But what you couldn't read in Steve Yzerman as an 18-year-old, and his size and his skill, was what was in his heart and in his chest.
Thank you.
They wanted to put him back.
Thank you for saying that, because I've always said the C on his jersey was part of the H in his chest. He had a heart and he had a will to win.
Oh, yeah.
And as though he was not that big, everybody on that team knew who was the boss. That's why I thought Steve Yzerman was such a critical part of the Red Wings' great success.
Well, they tried to send him back. They told him he was going back. It might have been the best thing that ever happened, because he said, I think he must have just said, "Really? Well, I think maybe I got some other ideas that you guys don't know about."
Yeah, I'll show you.
Every stage, every step, whether it was practice. Jimmy D told me not long ago. We looked down on the ice, and best guy on the ice is an 18-year-old. Okay? Well, that'll change when we get to the exhibition season. Exhibition games, Who's the best guy on the ice? Eisen, 18-year-old. Jesus, what's going on here? Then they say, well, maybe we will start the season before we send him back. We can play 10 games or whatever it is. Who's the best player on the ice? Eisenman. That was it. Game over. He wasn't going anywhere. That's how he said, I'm not letting you send me back. And that started the greatness that he's become.
As a youngster named Captain, when you saw that happen, did you think this is the guy? I mean, he can handle that sea? Yeah,
pretty much. I mean, I don't remember thinking much about it, except it was a natural thing to do because of the way he handled it. He was very, very quiet, very unassuming. Still is, actually. Very close to the vest. Very cerebral. But I can remember when he started, Jim, he only weighed about 165 pounds. He was getting the hell kicked out of him.
Oh, he was
all over the place.
Yep.
I remember that big brawl we had with Buffalo. Proby was in it, and that Kevin McGuire got after Eisenman. Proby one-punched the goalie there. Whatever. Oh, my God. And he went home that summer, Steve, and he put on 20 pounds. And I just remember thinking, you better start using that. My dad used to call it the equalizer. That's your hockey stick. You're not big enough to fight. Use the equalizer and let them know you ain't being pushed around anymore. And he learned fast how to protect himself. In a way, I guess he and I had a similar kind of experience as young guys that didn't weigh very much, weren't fighters per se, only fought if you had to, but you had to use that lumber to straighten people out and let them know, you're coming over here, you're going to eat this thing, and that's all there is to it. So it was good. So he obviously was the right guy for that choice.
Absolutely. Then I think about that run, and I think about the coaches, and I think about Jacques Demers. I think Brian Murray. There was Barry Smith. There's Dave Lewis, but the guy that took the Red Wings over the hump during that period of time was Scottie Bowman. What was the difference between what Scottie did and provided that team to get them to the mountaintop?
I think for Bowman, there's a couple things that what I didn't tell you is that Scottie Bowman was the coach of the Peterborough Peaks when I was like 12 and 13 years old.
So you had a big history with him.
Oh, yeah. And I was his stick boy. And on Thursday nights, my paycheck was $2, and I got a new stick. And that was like gold. Are you kidding me? Every Thursday. And Scottie, he knew my mom and dad from Kirkland Lake and Ted Lindsay's and all the Ralph Backstroms and the Flagers and the Hillmans and all Kirkland Lake. Knew them all. And so that history with Scottie for me went all the way back to when I was like 13 years old.
Wow.
And but Bowman always had a way to keep people on edge. And I think he learned it in Montreal through Stan Pollock. He was a Montreal guy all the way. And he learned it through the Canadians that you never let people get comfortable, because when they get comfortable, they're not going to be as good as they can be. They got to be uncomfortable. Make them uncomfortable. And he knew how to do that. Oh, my God. He was great at it. But I think the biggest thing that Scottie did to be successful here was being a coach in around the game since 1967. He coached, by the way, the two teams in St. Louis that we beat when we won the Cup, back-to-back years. Bowman was the coach.
Uh-huh.
And he had the Plager brothers, he had Jacques Plante, he had Glenn Hall, he had Noel Picard, all those St. Louis Blues. Red Berenson played for him. They were really good teams in St. Louis, and that was Scottie's beginning in the NHL as a coach.
Right.
And he found a way to change and adapt to the modern day athlete like nobody's business. He had to deal with Fedorov and Eisenman and all these guys and all these superstars, Hull and Shanahan and Hasek and on and on and on.
But
unbelievable.
And he had,
off the Russians.
Right. And he had to change how the game was played. It was, the speed, the size, all those things. That's what makes a great coach, their ability to adapt. And I think that's maybe what you're saying is Scottie had that in spades.
Oh, for sure. He was Scottie, and I would say this right to him, quirky as all get out. They tell stories about Bowman that are so funny. You look, you go, no, are you serious? And I just heard one the other day. I knew the story, but I heard it again. You can't get enough of it. I think it was the middle of a playoff game. And it's really like a 2-2 game or a 1-1 game, Colorado, right in the middle of the game. Scottie turns to Barry Smith. He says, hey, who's sitting in my seats up there? Who's sitting in my seat? They're not supposed to be there. It's a playoff game. And he's worried about who's sitting in his seats. That's Joe Louis. Like, oh my God.
That's quirky.
Only Scottie.
Yeah, that's
Remember when
quirky.
he painted? He had the dressing room painted right before the opposing team came in. Joe Louis, and it stunk to high hell, and it was making everybody nauseous. That was Scottie. Oh, he was a psychologist like nobody's business. He was so good at it.
He was a beauty.
Oh my God.
But
I think Jimmy, to wrap up Scottie,
yeah.
I think his biggest thing was he understood in certain situations, like when Sergei was having some personal issues.
Yep.
And Scottie he said, Sergei, you just go take care of it. No problem. Go. Bowman knew when to pull the trigger. He had a sixth sense about that. God bless him for that.
I think
that's what made him so great.
I think all great coaches have that thing in there where they, somewhere in the back of their mind, they know when to pull the trigger. And it's always the right time.
When to push, when to kick, when to push, and when to back off.
Yep.
But especially as the athletes began to change, and you've seen this in your broadcasting career, it's a whole different world now with these young people today.
That's a fact.
There's a sensitivity there that just wasn't even a forethought back in the day. My God. Some of the stuff that was said on the ice, you can't even say it today or you get suspended. And they were trying to take your head off. They threatened you. I mean, it was unbelievable back in the day. It was crazy.
Yeah,
you had to find a way to overcome it.
No, Dan Dierdorf played. He's my broadcast partner on Michigan football. He played back in the day in the NFL, and he said those were the wild west days. He used to say.
Oh yeah.
And it's similar in hockey. The other part of that run, and they made a movie out of it, the Russian Five. How important was that whole thing, and getting those guys over from Russia and incorporating them into this Red Wing hockey team that Scottie Bowman, the guy we just talked about, had to put them in there and fit them into that group so they could be dominant. How big was that?
It was absolutely huge because in reverse, those guys showed us how to play. People don't realize that. Those guys that get to scanner ice, they didn't like what they saw. So let's go back and try again. We'll go back and try again. We'll start over again. It was like, really? Are you serious? And back in the day, they taught you to dump the puck in, and I used to remember saying, this is rather silly. When we've got possession, why are we dumping this puck in? Then we got to go bust our brains and
what do they call it?
To go and get it back.
What did they call it? Dump and chase?
Yeah, basically, yeah. It was crazy. Like, okay, really? Is this the smartest way to play this game? Well, the Russians, having been on Team Canada 72, oh my God, did they have a game that we needed to learn? It was unbelievable. Guys playing out of position, left on the right, right on the left, anybody anywhere. It's very methodical. It was a totally different game. And that night when they put those guys together in Calgary, when Bowman put them together, Russian Five, in Calgary, the Calgary Flames got 8 shots on goal in their own rink because we had the puck on them. It was unbelievable. It was crazy to watch. And I remember at one point saying, they better get a bucket of Dramamine for the Calgary Flames because they're going to all get dizzy watching this. It was crazy.
And from your perspective,
oh my God.
Well, they had a puck. They had the puck on a string. But from your perspective, as a quote unquote old timer who came up through the ranks to see the way the game was played, to watch that, you had to be saying to yourself, "This is like poetry in motion. This is like ballroom dancing as opposed to the tractor pull."
It was because that's the way I would have loved to have played the game like that. But boy, oh boy, you talk about 5 guys that were in sync. I mean, and our system wasn't taught that way. It just wasn't. I used to roam around a lot. Back in the day when this game got going way, way, way back, there was a rover. There was a 6th skater. And it was crazy, it was all. But now we go to 3-on-3, where you get the high skill, high entertainment, speed, breakaways, chances, excitement, all that stuff. When those guys came into this system, not only me as an old-time hockey player, the players on the Red Wing sat there and went, really? Seriously? And it was like, ooh, boy, this is pretty good. And we got to try this stuff. And it became, fashionable to do so. but you had to be highly skilled. You had to be very, very smart, and you better be on the top of your toes. There was no dull moments to speak of because it was constant motion. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that's all part of that 25-year history that you're referring to, and the good fortune that we, as Red Wing fans, had to be able to watch this thing take place.
Yep, and two last things I want to talk to you about. One, you're very involved. I mean, you've been a broadcaster, part of this whole thing for the 25 years. You're an institution in Detroit, and I can't thank you enough for being here. But you're also very involved in charity events, and one of the things that you're involved in is opioid addiction. And Ken Daniels, who's your broadcast partner now, had a son tragically die, and you've been kind of with him at the forefront of all that. Tell us a little bit about your commitment to that.
Well, it's pretty easy, really. And I guess when it happens to somebody that close to you, most of the time it doesn't. I guess it's from a distance, but you begin to understand the kind of trouble that is out there and how much help is needed. And what I have learned over the years, Jim, is that when you're in a position to make a difference, you need to make a difference. You need to pull the trigger, because for a long time, I don't think I did because I didn't know how. And when we used to, one thing I'll never forget though, is that even when I came here right away back in 71, the Detroit Red Wing organization as a group, the alumni now one of the strongest in the NHL, always it was out in the community, always helping raise money for the less fortunate, for causes that needed to be helped.
Absolutely. The Red Wing alumni was one of the strongest of all the teams out there, always, way back 25 years ago. Jimmy
Peters and Alex and those guys started this thing, I don't know what year, 58 maybe or something like that. I'm not sure. But the bottom line is, schedule permitting, I skate with the team every chance I get to be out there. And when people will say, oh my God, it's so great to have you guys here, you have no idea what it means to them. And I go, excuse me, you have no idea what it does for us inside our chests and our hearts to be able to be here and to see the smiles on those boys and girls' faces that are absolutely priceless. It does us a world of good just to be able to do it. But we got, as I say, when you're in a difference maker position, you need to pull the trigger and do that. And I say that because I remember when I used to visit the sick children's, basically, and cancer children way, way, way back, I had no idea how to handle that. As a matter of fact, I could not handle it. I had a really difficult time. And for a short while, I had to stop it until I could get a handle on seeing some of these kids so banged up. Oh my God, it was so heartbreaking to see that. And I had to get a handle on myself so that I wouldn't let them down when I went in. And then I began to come back into it. And now it's, I can't tell you, as you know, the Red Wing following, whether it's children, adults, across the state and around the world, is I always call the Red Wings America's team because they got fans everywhere.
Yes, they do.
And to be a part of that is just so special. And back to your point, we can't do enough to help the people that need it the most. And we have many, many different charities we help with the alumni. We've probably helped, I'm thinking, Jim, the Detroit Red Wing alumni hockey team organization has helped raise north of $6 million. And this is in small chunks, too. So a lot of games, 25 games a year probably, that they play, and different things that they do. It's unbelievable. But the players are, our modern-day players, they're out in hospitals. They're out ringing the bells for funds to help, whatever it is, on Christmas time or Easter time and what have you. And that's really a good thing. This organization is part of the community and part of the fabric of what we've come to understand. And that 25 years is although they were the highlight, I guess, of modern day, I often tell people, don't forget where we came from, because you may be seeing the start of this again. We hope we are. And don't forget, once we get there, what it was like today, watching it, for Eisenman 25, 30 years ago. So that journey and that ride is very special. And as you know, if you're a hockey person, the passion this game brings out in one is absolutely priceless.
Oh, it is.
Can't be any better than that.
It can't. Last thing, Mickey, I would be remiss, and if I didn't ask you about the they call them Mickeyisms, the BC two-hander and the tic-tac-toe. Where did all that stuff come from? Is stuff from your childhood, people you've known along the way?
The real answer is I have no idea. I really don't know where they come from. I've been asked this before. I don't know. I guess so. Just, you used to play road hockey and you do play-by-play and different things, but I don't know. I always felt, Jim, that without even knowing it really, that I was there to act out a little bit. I got Irish in me, a little bit of Scotch, so that comes out.
Sure.
And it's like you're in the entertainment business, and I think I was doing that stuff before it was fashionable to do it. And I got looked on kind of a little differently at times for it. But you know what? I've always felt that hockey is such a diversion in a good way for people that are either ill, not feeling well for different reasons, having personal problems, having financial problems, whatever it is, that we can, even for a small window of time, if we can take them out of that difficult situation, psychologically, mentally, that we have some value. And to do that, if you don't try to be too funny when it's not there, it doesn't work. But if it's there, go for it. And never be afraid, of course, as you also know, because I've heard you on the radio, on the TV. You can never be afraid to make fun of yourself.
Oh,
it's the greatest thing, and I think people love it. They go, I say the same. That you're an extension of the fans,
right? It makes you human.
But you still call it like it is. Sometimes you got to say things that, hey, facts are facts. It was not good, and that's the way it is. But you don't. For credibility reasons, you have to hold your ground on what you're seeing. And the bottom line is that's the way it is. And I think fans appreciate that, even though you're slanted to your home team. There's no question about that. And so you should be, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
But the bottom line is, with all those sayings, I have sometimes some stuff comes out of my mouth that I don't even know where it came from. And I used to say to people, I'll be one that I don't like to listen to myself, Jim. I go, oh my God, why did you say that? That drives me nuts. I go, you know what? You had to be there in the moment.
Mickey, I will tell you, to me, that makes you human. That makes you Mickey Redmond. You are a treasure. And then I can't thank you enough for joining me today on my conversation with you.
Well, great to be talking with you and hearing your voice. What you see is what you get. And all I know, Jim, is the ride that I've been on since I came here in 1971 is an absolute ballbuster of a ride. It's been incredible. The memories that we're making, even every day, you try to make a good memory with good people. It's as good as it gets, and I can't be more thankful for all that, the way it's unfolded, for sure.
I hope you all got as much as I did from Mickey's chat. I just think the guy is as genuine as they get, and I'm so glad he's here in Detroit, so we can claim him as our own. I'm proud to call him a fellow broadcaster. He makes the profession better by being a part of it. Hey, keep an eye on my Facebook page, Jim Brandstatter76, my Twitter account, @JimBrandstatter, for information on upcoming conversations with. Also, go to JimBrandstatter.com or thebrandyshow.com to revisit past episodes of Conversations With. Thanks for joining us today, and tell your friends to visit us when you get the chance.